The October morning air bites at my cheeks as I weave through the crowded Manhattan sidewalk at 8:47, my phone wedged between my ear and shoulder while I grip my portfolio case in one hand and balance two large coffees in the other, like some kind of desperate circus act. The smell of street vendor pretzels mingles with exhaust fumes and that particular scent of ambition that seems to hang over the financial district like expensive cologne. My heart hammers against my ribs in a rhythm that matches my clicking heels on the pavement as I mentally rehearse my pitch for what feels like the thousandth time this morning. This is it. This is the meeting that changes everything. Harrison and Associates is the kind of corporate client that freelance graphic designers like me dream about. The kind that could turn my struggling one-woman operation into something that actually pays the bills, instead of just adding to the mountain of debt that keeps me awake at night. 3 months behind on rent. The eviction notice is still sitting on my kitchen counter next to the stack of student loan statements that I can barely stand to look at anymore. $53,000 in debt from a degree that was supposed to open doors, but instead just seems to have built me a very expensive prison. But today could change that. Today, I walk into that boardroom and show them designs that will make them forget every other firm they have interviewed. The golden morning light slants between the buildings in that particular way that only happens in autumn, making the city look almost magical, despite the chaos and grime. I check my phone again. 8:48. 12 minutes to get to Fifth Avenue and up to the 32nd floor. I can make it. I have to make it. The coffee in my right hand is for me, desperately needed after another sleepless night of tweaking designs and second-guessing every creative choice. The coffee in my left hand is for Marcus Harrison himself, a calculated gesture that my best friend Jessica insisted would show attention to detail and consideration. 2 shots of espresso, oat milk, no sugar, according to the intel I gathered from his assistant's Instagram. I practiced my opening line in the mirror this morning until it sounded natural instead of rehearsed. Good morning, Mr. Harrison. I brought you something to fuel our creative session. God, does that sound pretentious? Maybe I should just hand it to him without comment. My portfolio case bangs against my hip as I pick up speed, the weight of 6 months of work contained in that black leather rectangle. Everything I have, everything I am as a designer, reduced to 15 pages of carefully curated brilliance. Please let them see it. Please let this be the moment my life stops feeling like I am drowning and starts feeling like I am actually swimming toward something. I round the corner of Fifth Avenue with my eyes glued to my phone screen, double-checking the address one more time. Because the numbers on these buildings never seem to follow any logical pattern, and that is when the universe decides to destroy my life in the span of 3 seconds. My body collides with something solid and unmovable, a wall of muscle and expensive fabric that sends me stumbling backward, and I watch in absolute horror as the coffee cup in my left hand flies from my grip like it has been launched from a catapult. Time slows to a cruel crawl as the lid pops off mid-arc, and I can see every single drop of that 2-shot oat milk espresso spiraling through the autumn air in a perfect, catastrophic trajectory. The hot liquid hits the front of a charcoal suit with a splash that sounds impossibly loud against the white noise of the city, and I am frozen in place as steam rises from the soaked fabric in ghostly tendrils that twist in the morning light. The rich smell of espresso mingles with something else, something expensive and masculine like cedar and leather, and my brain finally catches up to what my body has just done as pedestrians around us gasp and stop to stare at the disaster I have created. The man I have just drenched is strikingly handsome in a way that makes my already racing heart stumble over itself, late 20s with sharp features that look like they have been carved from marble by someone who understood exactly how devastating a jawline could be. But it is his eyes that pin me in place, ice gray and intense, studying me with an expression I cannot read, while his 2 companions suddenly tense on either side of him like guard dogs who have just spotted a threat. Their hands move inside their jackets in a synchronized motion that sends a bolt of primal fear down my spine because I watch enough crime shows to know exactly what that gesture means. The suit I have destroyed is clearly expensive, the kind of expensive that my entire net worth could not cover. The fabric so fine it probably costs more per square inch than my monthly rent. Steam continues to rise from his chest, where the coffee has soaked through to his white shirt beneath, creating a dark, spreading stain that looks almost obscene in its intimacy. Time snaps back to normal speed, and the sounds of the city rush back in all at once. Car horns and voices, and the hammer of my pulse in my ears as I realize I have just destroyed the clothing of someone who travels with armed bodyguards. My portfolio case has fallen to the sidewalk. My own coffee is somehow still clutched in my right hand. And the meeting that was supposed to change my life is now happening in exactly 9 minutes, while I stand here having just committed what feels like a crime against fashion and possibly my own continued existence on this planet. I force my eyes upward from the disaster zone of his chest to his face, and the apology starts tumbling from my mouth before I can even process what I am looking at. I am so sorry. The words spill out in a frantic rush as I drop to my knees and start pawing through my bag for napkins, anything to fix this catastrophe. Oh my God, your suit! I will pay for the cleaning. I will pay for everything. Please, I am so sorry. My hands find a crumpled wad of Starbucks napkins, and I lunge forward to start blotting at his chest, my fingers pressing the thin paper against the soaked fabric of what is clearly the most expensive suit I have ever touched in my life. His two companions move toward me in perfect synchronization, like they are going to physically remove me from their boss, and terror spikes through my panic, because these are not normal businessmen, and I have just assaulted someone who clearly operates on a different level of society than I do. But the man raises one hand in a gesture so subtle I almost miss it, and his guards freeze mid-step like he has just flipped a switch that controls their entire existence. He has not moved, has not flinched, has not shown even a flicker of the rage I would expect from someone whose clearly custom-tailored suit has just been destroyed by a clumsy stranger with terrible timing. Instead, he studies me with an intensity that makes my skin prickle with awareness. Those ice-gray eyes traveling over my face, like he is cataloging every detail and filing it away for future reference. "Will you?" he says, and his voice is low and controlled with the kind of accent that makes me think of Italian films and old-world power. "Do you have any idea what you have just ruined?" It is not really a question. The words hang in the air between us like a threat wrapped in silk, and I realize my hands are still pressed against his chest, can feel the heat of his body through the soaked fabric, and the steady beat of his heart under my palm. I jerk backward like I have been burned and nearly fall on my ass on the sidewalk. I glance at my watch and my stomach drops through the pavement. 8:52. The meeting starts in 8 minutes and I am still 4 blocks away, and now I smell like coffee and desperation, and I have just destroyed the property of a man who radiates danger, like other people radiate body heat. The morning light catches his features, and I am struck by how devastatingly handsome he is, sharp cheekbones, and a jaw that could cut glass and lips that I should absolutely not be noticing right now. There is something about his presence that makes the air feel heavier, like gravity itself bends slightly in his direction. "I will pay for it," I repeat, and I hate how my voice shakes. "However much it costs." His phone starts ringing from inside his jacket, and he does not even glance at it, does not break eye contact with me for even a second, and something about that level of focus makes my breath catch in my throat. I fumble in my bag again and pull out a pen, grabbing one of the coffee-stained napkins from where it has fallen on the sidewalk. "Here," I say, my hand shaking as I scribble my name and number on the damp paper. "You can call me and let me know the cost of the cleaning or the replacement or whatever you need." I thrust the napkin toward him and he takes it with 2 fingers, holding it delicately like it might contaminate him. and I watch as his eyes scan the smeared numbers before traveling slowly back to me. His gaze moves over my clothes in a way that makes me acutely aware of every worn seam and slightly frayed edge, the way my blazer is from Target and probably looks it, the way my heels are scuffed at the toe from too many subway commutes. He sees the portfolio case at my feet, my obvious stress written across my face, and I can practically feel him calculating my net worth down to the penny. "This suit cost more than you make in 6 months," he says, and his tone is not cruel, but matter of fact, like he is simply stating a truth we both know. My stomach twists, because he is probably right, and we both know I cannot afford whatever astronomical figure he is about to name. "Then I will make payments," I hear myself say, and I am surprised by how steady my voice sounds. "I promise. I keep my promises." Something flickers in his eyes at that. Something I cannot identify, and he reaches into his jacket pocket with movements so controlled they look almost choreographed. He pulls out a business card and holds it out to me. Heavy black cardstock that feels expensive between my fingers. The gold embossing catches the light. Moretti Holdings. A phone number. Nothing else. "Come to this address tonight," he says, and the way he pauses before the next word makes my pulse spike. 8 p.m. We will discuss compensation. The word compensation rolls off his tongue like a promise and a threat all at once, and a shiver runs down my spine that has nothing to do with the October morning chill. Before I can respond, before I can ask what he means, or demand more information, or do anything besides stand there like an idiot, his two companions move in perfect synchronization to open the town car door. He slides into the back seat, with the kind of fluid grace that speaks of money and power and a life I cannot even begin to imagine. The door closes with an expensive-sounding thunk, and the car pulls away from the curb, leaving me standing on the corner of Fifth Avenue with a business card in one hand and my surviving coffee in the other, and absolutely no idea what just happened or what I have just agreed to. I burst through the doors of Harrison and Associates at 9:14, coffee-stained and sweating and so flustered I can barely remember my own name, and I know before I even open my mouth that I have already lost. The receptionist looks at me with barely concealed disdain as she leads me to the conference room on the 32nd floor, and when the door opens, I am faced with three men in their 50s sitting around a glass table with their arms crossed, and their expressions already set to dismissal. The fluorescent lighting is harsh and unforgiving, making everyone look slightly corpse-like, and the floor-to-ceiling windows behind them showcase a view of the Manhattan skyline that I will never be able to afford, no matter how many pitches I nail. Except I am not nailing this one. I can feel it in the air like a physical presence as I apologize for my tardiness and try to explain about an accident on the street. But Marcus Harrison just waves his hand like he is swatting away an annoying fly. The fabric of my blazer is still damp where I tried to wipe off the coffee spray, and I can smell the espresso on myself, acrid and obvious in this sterile space. I pull out my portfolio with hands that will not stop shaking and begin walking them through 6 months of work. Designs I poured my soul into, concepts that kept me up until 3 in the morning, perfecting every curve and color choice. But I can see it in their eyes. They have already checked out. They are looking at their watches and their phones, and occasionally at each other with those subtle expressions that say, "We are wasting our time here." "We were looking for someone more professional," Harrison says, when I am only halfway through my presentation, and the word professional lands like a slap. His eyes travel over my coffee-stained appearance and slightly worn clothes, and I can see him mentally writing me off as someone who does not belong in their world of corner offices and expense accounts. I watch as he barely glances at my designs before closing the portfolio and sliding it back across the table toward me like he is returning something defective. "These are good," he says in a tone that makes it clear he means they are adequate at best. "But we need someone who can handle the pressure of a corporate account. Someone reliable." The implication hangs in the air. Someone who does not show up late and disheveled because they assaulted a stranger with coffee on the street. I gather my things with as much dignity as I can manage and walk out of that conference room with my dreams in tatters and my bank account still dangerously close to zero. In the elevator going down, I pull out the black business card from my bag and stare at the gold embossing. Moretti Holdings, 8 p.m. It is the only thing that came from this disastrous morning, this mysterious summons from a strikingly handsome stranger whose suit I destroyed. And as I step back out onto the street where my life fell apart just 30 minutes ago, I realize that mysterious card might be the only opportunity I have left. My studio apartment feels even smaller than usual when I stumble through the door at 10:30, the disappointment from the failed pitch sitting in my chest like a physical weight. The faucet in my tiny kitchenette is dripping again with that rhythmic plinking sound that my landlord never seems to have time to fix, and the radiator clanks and groans without producing any actual heat. I drop my portfolio on the second-hand couch that I bought off Craigslist 3 years ago and pull out my laptop, my fingers already typing Moretti Holdings into the search bar, before I have even fully processed what I am doing. The results are surprisingly sparse for what seems to be a major company. A sleek website that talks about real estate acquisitions and import-export operations in the vaguest possible terms. A few business journal mentions about property deals in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Nothing concrete. Nothing that explains why a man who runs this company needs 2 armed bodyguards to escort him out of a town car on a Tuesday morning. I try searching for Dante Moretti next, and find even less. A handful of society page photos from charity galas over the past few years, and in every single one he is in the background, never the focus, always slightly blurred as if he is deliberately avoiding the camera. In one photo I can see him in a tuxedo, talking to a man I vaguely recognize as a city councilman. In another, he is shaking hands with someone the caption identifies as a prominent real estate developer. Always on the periphery. Always watching. Then I find it. A single article from 2 years ago about organized crime families in New York. And buried in the third paragraph is a mention of the Moretti family and their alleged connections to various enterprises throughout the city. That word alleged is doing some seriously heavy lifting. My phone rings, and Jessica's name flashes on the screen. I answer, and before I can say hello, she is already talking. "You are not seriously considering going, are you?" she says, and I can hear the panic in her voice because I texted her a photo of the card during my subway ride home. This screams human trafficking, Maya. Rich, mysterious man with armed guards summoning you to an address after dark. I pull the eviction notice off my kitchen counter where it has been sitting for 3 days like a ticking time bomb. I open my empty fridge and stare at the single container of yogurt that expired last week. I think about my credit cards that are maxed out and my student loans that I have not made a payment on in 2 months. What choice do I have? I say to Jessica, and my voice sounds hollow even to my own ears. I ruined a $15,000 suit. If I do not show up, he will probably sue me for everything I do not have, which is somehow even worse than having nothing. I pick out an outfit after we hang up, black pants and a simple sweater that are professional but not suggestive, and I text Jessica the address with a message that if I do not text by 10 p.m., she should call the police. Around me, my tiny apartment feels like a cage, walls covered with my own artwork that no one wants to pay for, and that black business card sitting on my counter feels like the only door that might still be open. I take the subway as far as it will get me, and then splurge on a cab for the final stretch into a neighborhood I have only ever seen in magazines, the kind of area where the streets are tree-lined and the houses sit back from the road behind walls and gates that cost more than most people's entire homes. The cab driver keeps glancing at me in the rearview mirror like he is trying to figure out what someone like me is doing in a place like this. And I wonder the same thing as we pull up to an address that turns out to be a set of massive iron gates flanked by stone pillars. There is a guardhouse that looks more secure than most bank vaults, and a man in a dark suit steps out as I pay the cab driver with money I definitely cannot afford to spend. I give my name and watch as he checks a tablet and speaks into a radio, and then the gates swing open with a mechanical hum that sounds expensive. The driveway curves through manicured grounds that probably require a full-time staff to maintain, and then the house comes into view, and my breath catches in my throat despite my determination not to be impressed. It is a modern mansion of glass and stone and clean lines that somehow manages to look both imposing and elegant. Perched on what must be one of the highest points in the area with views of the Manhattan skyline glittering in the distance. 3 black SUVs are parked in the circular driveway, and I recognize them as the same type that was waiting on Fifth Avenue this morning when my life went sideways. I climb out of the cab on legs that feel unsteady, and the gates close behind me with a finality that makes my stomach clench. A woman in her 60s opens the front door before I even reach it. Her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in an elegant twist, and her smile warm in a way that contrasts sharply with the intimidating setting. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you," she says in accented English. "This way, please." I follow her into an entrance hall that takes my breath away. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine, and museum-quality art on the walls, and the scent of expensive leather and wood polish hanging in the air, like invisible evidence of wealth. My sneakers squeak against the polished floor with each step, and the sound is painfully loud in the hushed space, announcing my presence like a neon sign that says, "I do not belong here." Everything whispers old money and power, from the crystal chandelier overhead to the fresh flowers in a vase that probably costs more than my monthly rent. I catch sight of my reflection in a gilt-framed mirror, and I look exactly like what I am, a struggling artist in discount clothes standing in a palace built by money I cannot even conceptualize. Isabella leads me through a series of rooms that blur together in a haze of elegance until we reach a study that looks like something out of an architectural magazine. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, and a fireplace crackling with actual flames and windows that overlook a private garden, lit by subtle landscape lighting. The man from this morning sits behind a massive wooden desk that looks like it has been carved from a single ancient tree, and he is now wearing a crisp navy suit that probably costs as much as the one I destroyed, looking every inch the powerful businessman who commands empires from behind mahogany and glass. He stands when I enter, and the gesture is so unexpectedly courteous that it throws me off balance, because men who travel with armed guards do not usually worry about manners. "Miss Torres," he says, and his voice is exactly as I remember it. Low and controlled with that accent that does things to my nervous system I do not want to examine. "You came." "I said I would," I reply, and I'm surprised by how steady my voice sounds. I keep my promises. Something flickers in those ice-gray eyes, and he gestures to one of the leather chairs positioned across from his desk. I sit and clutch my bag in my lap, like it might protect me from whatever is about to happen. He remains standing for a moment, studying me with that same unsettling intensity from this morning, and then he slides a folder across the polished surface of the desk. I open it with fingers that want to shake, and find myself staring at what is essentially a bill. $18,000. The suit was 15, he says as I struggle to process the number. The rest covers dry cleaning of the shirt beneath, the inconvenience of rearranging my mourning, and the replacement of Italian leather shoes that were also damaged. "I obviously cannot pay that," I say, and I force myself to meet his eyes, even though everything in me wants to look away from that penetrating gaze. "But I can make payments. Or what did you have in mind?" The silence stretches between us, and I can hear the crackle of the fire and the tick of an expensive clock somewhere in the room, and my own pulse hammering in my ears. "I need a graphic designer," he says finally, and the words are so unexpected that I actually blink. "My company is rebranding. New logo, marketing materials, website redesign. I have been interviewing firms, but they lack something." He pauses, and his eyes travel over my face like he is searching for something specific. Authenticity. They create what they think I want, rather than what I actually need. I stare at him and try to make sense of this offer because it makes absolutely no sense at all. You want to hire me, I say slowly. The woman who destroyed your suit and showed up late to the most important meeting of her life. To redesign your entire corporate brand. Why would you possibly trust me with that? Work for me exclusively for 3 months, he says, leaning back in his chair with the kind of controlled ease that suggests he is used to making offers people cannot refuse. Complete the rebrand. In exchange, your debt is cleared. My designer instincts kick in automatically despite the surreal nature of this conversation, overriding my fear with professional calculation. 3 months of full-time work is worth more than $18,000, I point out, and something like approval flashes in his eyes. Then consider the rest your compensation, he replies, and names a figure that makes my brain momentarily short-circuit because it is triple what I made all of last year. Triple. For 3 months of work. I grip the arms of the leather chair to keep myself grounded because this cannot be real. Offers like this do not happen to people like me, and there has to be a catch. There are conditions, he continues, and there it is. You work here at the estate. The materials do not leave this property. You will have full access to my operations for inspiration and understanding of the brand. The way he pauses before the word operations sends warning bells clanging in my head because I know what that probably means, what those alleged connections in that article probably refer to, and I am being offered a front row seat to whatever empire this man has built in the shadows. Every instinct I have screams that this is dangerous, that I should stand up and walk out and deal with the debt through normal legal channels. But then I think about my eviction notice, and my empty fridge, and the student loans that are crushing me, and the pitch meeting that crashed and burned this morning. Why me? I hear myself ask, and my voice sounds strange to my own ears. You spilled coffee on me this morning, and now you are offering me my dream job. His expression shifts, and for a moment I see something underneath the controlled businessman exterior, something raw and real that makes him seem almost human. Because in that moment I saw something, he says, and he leans forward with his elbows on the desk and his eyes locked on mine. Desperation, yes, but also pride. You did not make excuses or play victim. You took responsibility and tried to fix it immediately. You could have run or argued or blamed the crowd, but instead you grabbed napkins and tried to help even though you knew you could not afford the consequences. I need someone with integrity for this project. The way he says integrity makes it clear this is about more than just a corporate rebrand, that there is something personal driving this decision, and I realize I am standing at a crossroads that will define the rest of my life. 3 months in this mansion working for a man who radiates danger like heat. 3 months of the kind of money that could change everything. 3 months of whatever operations he needs me to understand, and all I have to do is say yes. He produces a contract from his desk drawer, like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, and the fact that it is already prepared tells me he knew I would come, knew I would say yes, knew I had no other choice but to walk into whatever trap he has set with my eyes wide open. My hand trembles as I pick up the expensive pen he slides across the desk, and I scan the document quickly, even though I know I am going to sign it regardless of what it says because $18,000 in debt, plus the promise of a six-figure payday, is not something I can walk away from. The paper is heavy stock, the kind that speaks of lawyers and binding agreements and consequences for breaking terms I probably do not fully understand. I lean forward to sign at the bottom and our fingers brush as he points to the signature line, and the contact is electric in a way that makes my breath catch in my throat and sends a jolt of awareness down my spine that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the way his skin feels against mine. I jerk my hand back and look up to find him watching me with an intensity that makes my pulse spike, and something flickers in his usually controlled expression, something that looks almost like recognition or surprise or maybe hunger. Isabella will show you to your room, he says, as I finish signing my name in handwriting that looks shaky and uncertain. You start tomorrow at 9 a.m. Come prepared to stay the week. We have a lot of ground to cover. My room, I repeat, and the words come out more like a question than I intended. The commute would be inefficient, he replies smoothly. Room and board are included. Before I can protest or demand clarification or ask exactly what I have just agreed to, he adds in that same controlled tone, separate guest wing, full privacy, security for your protection. The word protection hangs in the air between us like a promise and a threat all at once, and I realize that night has fallen while we have been talking, that the study is now lit only by the fireplace, and the desk lamp creating intimate shadows that make the space feel smaller and more dangerous. I feel like I have just signed a deal with the devil, like I have just sold my soul for money and opportunity, and the chance to climb out of the hole my life has become. But I cannot deny the flutter of something in my chest when I look at him, cannot pretend that the brush of his fingers against mine did not send electricity through my entire body, cannot ignore the way his presence makes the air feel charged with possibility. He stands and extends his hand for a formal handshake to seal our agreement, and when I place my palm against his, I feel the strength in his grip and the heat of his skin, and I know with absolute certainty that the next 3 months are going to change me in ways I cannot begin to predict. Isabella leads me back through the mansion and down a different hallway into what she calls the guest wing, and when she opens the door to my room, I actually stop walking because calling it a room is like calling the ocean a puddle. The suite is larger than my entire apartment, dominated by a king-sized bed with sheets that look like they are made of silk and pillows so numerous they could probably house a small family. The bathroom, visible through an open door, is all marble and gleaming fixtures, with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, and a shower with so many jets and nozzles it looks like something from a spa. I move to the walk-in closet in a daze and find it already stocked with clothes, hangers filled with jeans and sweaters, and dresses all in styles I would actually wear. And when I check the tags, they are all my size exactly. How did he? I start to ask, but Isabella just smiles with a knowing expression that suggests she has seen this before. Mr. Moretti is very thorough, she says, and the way she emphasizes thorough makes it sound like an understatement of epic proportions. The windows are floor to ceiling and overlook the garden I saw from the study and a pool that glows turquoise in the darkness. But as I move closer, I notice the security cameras positioned at strategic intervals and the high walls that surround the property, topped with what looks like sophisticated monitoring equipment. Breakfast is at 7, Isabella continues as she moves toward the door. Lunch at noon, dinner at 7 p.m. Mr. Moretti keeps a strict schedule. She pauses with her hand on the doorknob and her expression shifts to something more serious. Do not wander the East Wing after dark. That is his private residence. The way she says it makes it clear this is not a suggestion but a rule, one of those unspoken boundaries that suggest danger I cannot yet see or understand. After she leaves, I pull out my phone and text Jessica with fingers that still feel shaky. I am okay. It is complicated. I will explain tomorrow. Then I explore the suite properly, running my hands over surfaces that feel expensive and foreign, and that is when I find the package on the desk positioned near the window. Inside are professional art supplies, the kind I have always wanted but could never afford, a top-of-the-line drawing tablet still in its box, and software packages I have literally dreamed about owning. Everything I would need to do the job he has hired me for, already waiting, already prepared. He knew I would say yes. He knew I would come. He has been planning this, maybe since the moment I crashed into him on Fifth Avenue, maybe even before. And as I sink onto the silk-covered bed in this beautiful prison, I realize I have just entered a world I do not understand, with a man who sees more than I want him to see. I lie awake on sheets that feel like water against my skin, staring at a ceiling so high it disappears into shadows, and I cannot reconcile the luxury surrounding me with the alarm bells clanging in my head like warning sirens. The silence of the house is not really silence at all. I can hear sounds drifting through the walls and windows, men's voices speaking rapid Italian that rises and falls in urgent conversation, car doors opening and closing, the electronic beep of security systems engaging and disengaging. I get out of bed and move to the window, looking down at the garden below, and that is when I see him. Dante stands near the fountain with his phone pressed to his ear, and even from this distance I can read the tension in his posture. The way he moves with one hand raking through his dark hair in what looks like frustration or anger. His presence draws my eye like gravity, the way he commands space even when he thinks no one is watching. And I find myself studying the lines of his body and the way he gestures as he speaks, and I force myself to look away because this is dangerous territory. My last relationship destroyed me in ways I am still discovering. Tyler seemed perfect at first, attentive and generous, but slowly the attention became control and the generosity became leverage. He convinced me to put bills in my name, to co-sign loans, to trust him with money I did not have, and when it all fell apart, he left me with $30,000 in debt that was not mine and a credit score that would take years to repair. I vowed after Tyler that I would never depend on a man again, would never put myself in a position where someone else held power over my survival. And here I am, living in a stranger's mansion and signing contracts that bind me to his world for 3 months. But something about Dante feels different, and I cannot quite articulate why. Tyler's danger was hidden behind charm and lies, a slow poison that I did not recognize until it had already spread through every part of my life. Dante's danger is right there on the surface, honest and undisguised, in his armed guards and his mysterious business, and the way people defer to him like he is royalty. He has not pretended to be anything other than what he is, has not tried to hide the darkness that surrounds him, and there is something almost refreshing about that brutal honesty. I watch him end his call and stand for a moment looking up at the mansion, and I wonder if he knows I am here at the window watching him, if he can feel my gaze the way I seem to feel his. Eventually, I climb back into bed, and exhaustion finally pulls me under into dreams filled with ice-gray eyes and the smell of cedar and coffee and the electric feeling of his fingers brushing against mine. I wake to sunlight streaming through windows I do not recognize, and for a disorienting moment, I cannot remember where I am or how I got here. And then it all comes rushing back in a wave that makes my stomach clench. The mansion, the contract, Dante Moretti and his ice-gray eyes, and the 3 months I just committed to spending in his world. I climb out of the massive bed and find coffee and breakfast already set up in the sweet sitting area, a carafe that is still hot, and pastries that are still warm, as if someone knew exactly when I would wake and timed their delivery accordingly. The thought sends a shiver down my spine that is equal parts unnerving and something else I do not want to examine. I shower in the marble bathroom and dress in one of the provided outfits, designer jeans that fit like they were tailored for my body, and a cashmere sweater so soft it feels like wearing a cloud, and the fact that everything fits perfectly is deeply unsettling because it means he has been paying attention in ways I did not notice. Isabella appears at my door at 8:45 to lead me through the mansion to what she calls my studio, and when we arrive, I actually stop breathing for a moment because the room is perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows flood the space with natural light, and someone has converted what must have been a library into a designer's dream workspace with drafting tables and computers and every tool I could possibly need already arranged and waiting. Dante is already there, leaning against one of the tables, and he is more relaxed than yesterday in dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms in a way that feels somehow intimate, like I am seeing him in a state of partial undress. "Tell me about Moretti Holdings," I say as I move to the workspace and start arranging things the way I like them, giving my hands something to do besides shake. "What do you actually do?" We acquire properties, he says, and his voice is casual, but his eyes watch me with that same intensity that makes me hyper-aware of every movement I make. Renovate them, manage investments, import specialty goods from Italy. He pauses and something shifts in his expression. Legitimate business. The way he emphasizes legitimate makes it clear there are layers beneath that carefully constructed surface, shadows he is not ready to show me yet. And I realize this is going to be the dance we do for the next 3 months. Him revealing just enough to keep me intrigued. Me pretending I do not notice all the things he is not saying. The morning light catches the strong lines of his face, and I force myself to look away and focus on the blank screen in front of me, because I am here to work, not to stare at my dangerous employer and wonder what secrets hide behind those gray eyes. Over the next few days, I shadow Dante to understand the brand, which is what he tells me we are doing. But what I am actually doing is getting a front row seat to a world I have only seen in movies. He takes me to a business meeting at an upscale restaurant in Midtown, the kind of place where the menu does not list prices, and the sommelier probably makes more than I did in my old life. And I watch as we are seated immediately at a table that the host swore was fully booked when we walked in. Every person we pass stops their conversation mid-sentence when Dante enters, and I see it in their faces, the fear disguised as respect, the way grown men in $1,000 suits defer to him like he is royalty or something more dangerous. He introduces me to a table of businessmen as my designer, and the possessive language should not send a thrill through me, but it does. The way he says I am something that belongs to him already. I notice things I am not supposed to notice. The way an older man in an expensive suit approaches our table and actually kisses Dante's ring, like we are in some kind of period drama. The way waiters materialize the moment he even glances in their direction. The way every conversation in the room seems to pause when he speaks. One meeting with an aging Italian man whose face looks like weathered leather and whose eyes are sharp. As broken glass makes my blood run cold when he grips Dante's shoulder and says in accented English that your father would be proud, Dante. You have doubled our reach while staying under the radar. I am not stupid. I have been piecing together the truth since that first Google search, since the article that mentioned alleged connections, since the armed bodyguards and the security cameras, and the way people treat him like he could end their lives with a word. On the drive back to the mansion, I finally ask the question that has been building in my chest for days. You are not just a businessman, are you? He is quiet for a long moment, his hands relaxed on the steering wheel of the black sports car that probably costs more than most houses, and when he finally speaks, his voice is measured and controlled. I am exactly what I need to be. Does it matter, Maya? You are designing a logo, not judging my soul. It is the first time he has used my name, my actual first name instead of Miss Torres, and the way it sounds in his voice with that slight Italian accent feels intimate and personal, like he is touching me, even though we are separated by the center console. I should be terrified. I should demand he take me back to my apartment and tear up the contract and run as far from this man and his world as I can possibly get. But instead, I find myself leaning back in the leather seat and saying, no, I suppose it does not matter at all, and I realize I have just crossed another line I did not know existed. It is after midnight when I finally look up from my sketchbook and realize we have been working in comfortable silence for hours. The only sounds the crackle of the fireplace and the soft scratch of my pencil and the occasional rustle of papers as Dante reviews contracts at his desk. The study feels different at night, more intimate somehow, the shadows softer and the light from the flames casting everything in warm amber tones that make the space feel less like a place of business and more like something private. I stretch my stiff neck and my eyes land on the bookshelf behind his desk, where a collection of framed photographs sits among the leather-bound volumes, and one in particular catches my attention. A younger version of Dante, maybe 18 or 19, standing between an older couple, his arm around a beautiful woman with dark hair and his hand on the shoulder of a distinguished-looking man with the same gray eyes. "Who are they?" I ask without thinking, and the moment the words leave my mouth, I see his entire body go still. "My parents," he says after a long pause, and his voice has lost all its usual control, sounds almost rough. "They died when I was 19. The crack in his armor invites something from me in return, some equivalent exchange of pain, and before I can stop myself, I am telling him about Tyler, about the financial abuse and the debt, and the way I had to rebuild myself from nothing while carrying the weight of someone else's choices. I watch Dante's expression shift from shuddered grief to something darker and more dangerous, his jaw clenching and his hands gripping the arms of his chair with enough force that I can see the tendons stand out. "Where is he now?" he asks, and his voice is so cold it sends ice down my spine. "It does not matter," I say quickly. "I handled it." "That is where you are wrong," Dante says, and he stands abruptly and moves to the fireplace with his back to me. "Men who abuse women, who take advantage of someone's trust, they should be held accountable." The protection in his voice is fierce and genuine, and I realize I am seeing a different side of him, something beyond the controlled businessman or the dangerous figure who commands rooms with his presence. He tells me more then, standing there with the firelight painting shadows across his face. His father built their empire. His mother was the moral compass. Their death in a car accident, and he emphasizes those words like, "They are lies changed everything." "I spent 10 years hunting the people responsible," he says quietly, and he turns to look at me with eyes that hold old pain and older rage. "I found them all." The implication of what he is saying crashes over me like a wave, and I should be horrified, but instead I feel something shift between us, some understanding that we are both people shaped by violence and loss. And when he returns to his chair and we go back to our work, the silence is different now, heavier with shared secrets and the terrible intimacy of showing each other our scars. A week into my time at the mansion, I finally have something to show him, concepts that have kept me awake every night refining and perfecting, because I need him to understand that I see what he is trying to build. I spread the designs across his desk late on a Friday evening, my heart hammering as he leans forward to study them in silence, his expression completely unreadable in that way he has mastered that makes me want to scream. The logo I have created walks a knife edge between legitimacy and hidden power, clean lines that suggest corporate respectability, but with subtle elements that speak to something older and more dangerous, a visual representation of the duality he embodies. He studies each page for what feels like an eternity, while I stand there trying not to fidget, trying not to reveal how desperately I need his approval, and when he finally looks up at me, his eyes hold something raw and unguarded. "It is perfect," he says, and his voice has lost all its usual control. "You see it. You see me." The vulnerability in those words stops my breath in my chest, because this is not the controlled businessman or the dangerous figure who commands empires. This is just a man who feels truly seen for maybe the first time in his life. He stands and moves around the desk toward me, and I rise to meet him without conscious thought, the portfolio forgotten, everything forgotten except the way he is looking at me like I have just given him something precious. The air between us charges with tension that has been building for a week, for every moment we have spent in the same room pretending not to notice each other, and when his hand comes up to cup my face, his palm is warm against my cheek, and his thumb traces my bottom lip with aching gentleness. "Tell me to stop," he says, and it sounds like a plea more than a command. "I cannot," I whisper, "because it is the truth. Because I have been wanting this since the moment I looked up at him on Fifth Avenue with coffee dripping from his ruined suit." The kiss is inevitable and possessive and consuming. Nothing gentle about the way his mouth claims mine, or the way his other hand slides into my hair to hold me exactly where he wants me. I respond with equal hunger, months of loneliness and fear dissolving under the heat of his touch, and my hands grip the front of his shirt like I am drowning, and he is the only solid thing in a world that has tilted sideways. We break apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, and the space between us feels electric and dangerous. "This is a terrible idea," I manage to say, and his laugh is low and rough against my lips. "The best ones usually are," he replies, and then he is kissing me again, and I am letting him, and I know with absolute certainty that everything has just changed, and there is no going back to the careful professional distance we have been maintaining. I wake to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows for the second time since arriving at this mansion, but this time the windows are different, and the bed is different, and there is an arm wrapped around my waist that definitely was not there before. Silk sheets slide against my skin as I shift slightly and take in my surroundings, realizing with a jolt that I am in the forbidden East Wing, in Dante's private bedroom, in his bed. The room is surprisingly personal in the morning light, not the stark, masculine space I would have expected, but filled with books on the nightstand and photographs on the dresser and small human touches that make him seem less like a dangerous criminal and more like just a man. I turn carefully to look at him, and my breath catches because sleep has erased all the hardness from his face, making him look younger and more vulnerable. Dark hair falling across his forehead, and his features relaxed in a way I have never seen while he is awake. My phone buzzes on the nightstand, and I reach for it slowly, trying not to wake him, and my stomach drops when I see 12 missed calls from Jessica and a string of increasingly frantic text messages asking if I am alive. I carefully extract myself from his arm and the warmth of his body and gather my scattered clothes from the floor where we left them last night in our rush to get to each other. And I am halfway to the door when his voice stops me. "Running?" he asks, and his voice is rough with sleep, but that underlying command is still there. "This complicates everything," I say without turning around, clutching my clothes against my chest like they might protect me from the intensity of whatever is happening between us. "Only if we let it," he replies, and I hear the rustle of sheets as he sits up. "Come back to bed, Maya." I turn to face him and he is watching me with those gray eyes that see too much, the sheet pulled around his waist, and despite everything screaming at me to leave, I find myself walking back and letting him pull me down beside him. We talk then, really talk, not about the rebrand or the business or the careful professional topics we have been using to avoid the tension between us. "I do not do this," he says, and one hand comes up to trace the line of my jaw with unexpected gentleness. "Let people close. But you," he pauses, and something raw flashes in his eyes. "You are different, Maya. Dangerous to me in ways you cannot understand." The admission clearly costs him. I can see it in the tension of his shoulders, and the way he cannot quite meet my eyes as he says it, and I realize we are both terrified of what we have just started, both standing on the edge of something that could destroy us. But when he pulls me against his chest and I feel his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my palm, I also realize I am not running anywhere. We are having breakfast in the formal dining room the next morning. An awkward dance of pretending last night did not completely shatter every boundary between us. When Luca appears in the doorway with an expression that makes my stomach clench even before he speaks. He launches into rapid Italian directed at Dante, the words tumbling over each other with clear urgency, and I watch as Dante's entire demeanor shifts from the almost relaxed man who was reaching for the coffee pot to something cold and lethal. He issues commands in the same clipped Italian, his voice dropping to a register I have not heard before, and Luca nods once and disappears as quickly as he arrived. "Stay in your wing today," Dante says to me, and his tone brooks no argument. "Do not leave the house." "What is happening?" I ask, setting down my fork because my appetite has completely vanished. "Nothing that concerns you," he replies, already standing and buttoning his suit jacket with sharp, efficient movements. "Just a precaution." But everything about his body language screams that this is not just a precaution. This is something serious and dangerous. And after he leaves with Luca, I retreat to my wing as ordered and spend the morning trying to focus on design work while my mind races with possibilities. Through my window that afternoon, I see increased security, men with visible weapons that they are not even trying to hide anymore. Black SUVs coming and going in a constant stream that suggests crisis management or war preparation. By 3 in the afternoon, I cannot take it anymore, and I sneak out of my wing, moving through the mansion as quietly as I can, breaking his order, because I need to know what threat has descended on this house and whether it has anything to do with me. I find my way to his office and press myself against the wall outside the partially open door, and that is when I hear his voice on the phone speaking English now, his accent thicker with anger. If Marco Santoro thinks he can move on my territory while making threats, Dante says, and the controlled fury in his voice makes my blood run cold. No, I want him to know exactly who he is dealing with. There is a pause, and then another voice in the room, deeper and older, says something I cannot quite make out, and then clearly, and the girl, she is a liability, Dante. She does not understand our world. My heart stops beating as I wait for his response, and when it comes, his voice is sharp as broken glass. She is not a liability, he says, and each word is precisely enunciated like he is carving them into stone. She is mine. Anyone who touches her answers to me. I back away from the door with my heart pounding so hard I am sure they can hear it. Fear and something dangerously close to exhilaration warring in my chest, because I am apparently in danger from someone named Marco Santoro, but also Dante just claimed me as his with a fierceness that should terrify me, but instead makes me feel protected in a way I have never experienced before. I do not think about what I am doing. I just move through the mansion, following the sound of voices, until I find Dante in a meeting room surrounded by 6 men in expensive suits, who all turn to stare at me like I have just materialized from another dimension. I need to talk to you, I say, and my voice is steadier than I feel. Now. The room goes absolutely silent, and I can feel the shock radiating from everyone except Dante, whose expression shifts from surprise to something darker and more dangerous, but he stands smoothly and excuses himself and leads me down the hall to the study, with tension rolling off him in waves that I can almost see. I told you to stay in your wing, he says the moment the door closes behind us, and his voice is tight with controlled anger. And I am not one of your soldiers to be ordered around, I shoot back, my own anger rising to meet his. Who is Marco Santoro and what does he want with me? His jaw clenches and I watch the muscle jump beneath his skin. You were listening, he says, and it is not a question. Damn right I was, I reply, moving closer so he cannot avoid looking at me. If I am in danger, I deserve to know why. The silence stretches between us, and I can see him weighing options, deciding how much truth I can handle, and then something in his expression shifts, like he is making a choice that cannot be unmade. My family is not just wealthy, Maya, he says finally, and his voice has lost all its careful control. We are one of the 5 families that control this city. His father was boss before him, he continues when I just stare at him trying to process those words. His death was not an accident, it was a hit by rival factions trying to destabilize our operations. I spent 10 years rebuilding our power, making us untouchable, but that kind of expansion makes enemies. Marco Santoro runs the Southside operations, he says, moving to pour himself a drink from the crystal decanter on his desk. We have been expanding our territory into areas he considers his, and he is pushing back. The casual way he discusses territory and operations and hits makes my head spin, because this is not alleged anymore. This is him standing in front of me and confirming everything I suspected, and more. So what does he want with me? I ask, and my voice sounds small in the large room. You, Dante says, and he turns to look at me with eyes that hold a kind of anguish I have never seen in him. He wants to use you to hurt me, to show that I am vulnerable, to prove that caring about someone makes me weak. He drains his glass in one swallow. He is not wrong. The admission hangs in the air between us, and I realize that by sleeping with me, by claiming me as his, Dante has painted a target on my back. And the worst part is I cannot even find it in myself to regret what we have done, because the way he is looking at me right now makes me feel like the most valuable thing in his entire empire. Dante moves to his desk and pulls out a manila envelope, the kind that looks official and ominous, and when he dumps the contents across the polished wood surface, my blood turns to ice in my veins. Photographs. Dozens of them. All of me. Leaving my apartment building with my portfolio case. At the coffee shop on the corner where I buy my morning espresso. Walking down Fifth Avenue the morning I crashed into him. Entering the gates of the Moretti estate that first night. Someone has been watching me, documenting my movements, and the timestamps on some of these photos go back weeks before the coffee incident. This was planned, I hear myself say, and my voice sounds distant, like it is coming from someone else. The coffee was not an accident. He knew I would be there. Dante's expression confirms what I have just realized, and I feel the ground shift beneath my feet as my entire understanding of how we met rearranges itself into something darker. Santoro has informants everywhere, Dante says, and his voice is rough with barely contained rage. Your friend Jessica's boyfriend. He works at a firm we are investigating for money laundering. Santoro found out about the connection, saw an opportunity. I sink into the chair behind me because my legs will not hold me anymore. You mean I was set up, pushed into your path that morning? The surveillance likely started the moment they identified you as a potential asset, he says, moving around the desk to crouch in front of me so we are eye level. They were watching that morning, probably had someone bump you or distract you at precisely the right moment to ensure the collision. My hands are shaking and I grip the arms of the chair to steady them. So what? I am bait, a way to get to you. You were, he says, and one hand comes up to cup my face with devastating gentleness. Now you are leverage, because I made the mistake of caring about you, and in my world, that is the most dangerous thing I could do. The word mistake should hurt, but I can see in his eyes that he does not mean it that way, that what he is really saying is caring about me has made him vulnerable in ways he has spent years avoiding. I should feel betrayed, should be furious that I was manipulated into this situation, that my entire meeting with him was orchestrated by someone who wants to use me as a weapon. But looking at the anguish in his face, the way his thumb traces my cheekbone like I am something precious and breakable, I realize I am more angry for him than at him, because he did not ask for this either, did not choose to care about someone who could be used against him. How do we fix this? I ask, and the fact that I say we, instead of you, tells us both everything we need to know about where my loyalties have already shifted. I can move you across the country by morning, Dante says, and he is back on his feet now, pacing the study like a caged animal. New identity. Enough money to start over somewhere comfortable. Protection from a distance. Santoro would never find you. You would be free of all this. He gestures around the room and I realize he is offering me a way out, is willing to let me go despite what we have shared, and the fact that it clearly costs him everything to make this offer tells me more about his feelings than any declaration could. I look around the study at the life I have glimpsed over the past week, at the man I have fallen for despite every reason not to, despite knowing what he is and what his world contains. I think about my old life, my studio apartment with its leaking faucet and its silence, the endless cycle of struggling to make rent and taking on projects I hated just to survive, playing it safe and getting nowhere. What if I do not want to run? I hear myself say. Dante closes his eyes like I have just caused him physical pain, and his hands curl into fists at his sides. Then you are choosing a life where you will always have a target on your back, he says, and his voice is raw. Where I will have enemies who see you as my weakness, where you can never go back to normal. Was I ever going to go back to normal? I ask, standing up and moving toward him. The moment I looked up and saw you on Fifth Avenue, something changed. Maybe I am tired of running, of playing small, of building a life so safe and small that nothing can touch me, but nothing can reach me either. I step closer until I'm right in front of him, and I can see the war happening behind his eyes, the part of him that wants to protect me fighting with the part that wants to keep me. But I need to know this is real, I say, placing my hand on his chest where I can feel his heart hammering, that I am not just a possession you are protecting, that you feel what I feel. His hand comes up to cover mine, pressing my palm harder against his chest. I have built my entire life around not feeling, he says quietly, around control and distance and never letting anyone close enough to be used against me. And then you crashed into me with your coffee and your apologies, and I saw something in your eyes, something fierce and real and completely unafraid of me. The way he looks at me makes my breath catch, because there is no armor left, no careful control, just raw honesty. I am terrified of what you make me feel, Maya, he says, but I am more terrified of losing you. So if you stay knowing that I will burn the entire city down before I let anyone hurt you. The possessiveness in his voice should scare me, but instead it settles something in my chest that has been restless and uncertain for as long as I can remember. Then I am staying, I say, and I watch relief and fear and something that looks like love flash across his face. His carefully maintained control cracks like glass shattering, and he crosses to me in 2 strides, his hands coming up to cup my face with a reverence that makes my chest ache. You want to know if it is real, he says, and his voice is rough with emotion. I have never heard from him. I have been in this life for 16 years. I have never brought a woman to my home, never let anyone see me as anything but the boss, never let myself be vulnerable. His thumbs trace the curve of my cheekbones, and I can feel the slight tremor in his fingers that tells me how much this confession is costing him. And then you crashed into me with your coffee and your apologies and your fire, he continues, and his eyes search mine like he is looking for something he desperately needs to find. And I saw it immediately. You were going to ruin me. The words should sound like an accusation, but they come out like a prayer, like he is grateful for the destruction I represent. I am already ruined, Maya, he says, and he leans his forehead against mine in a gesture so intimate it steals my breath. I will burn the entire city down before I let anyone hurt you. That is not protection. That is obsession. That is... He stops and I watch him struggle with the words. This man who commands armies and controls empires reduced to silence by something as simple and devastating as emotion. Love, I whisper, offering him the word he cannot quite say. Yes, he says, simple and definitive, and the single syllable carries more weight than any elaborate declaration. So if you stay knowing that I will never let you go, that you are mine completely, and I do not share. The possessiveness in his voice is absolute and total, and should terrify me, should send me running back to my safe small life, where no one claims me, or wants me, or sees me the way he does. Instead, it ignites something primal in my chest, something that has been dormant my entire life waiting for someone to awaken it. Then I am staying, I say, and I watch as relief and hunger and fierce joy flash across his face in rapid succession. His mouth crashes against mine with none of the control from our first kiss. This is raw and desperate and claiming, his hands sliding into my hair to hold me exactly where he wants me. I kiss him back with equal ferocity, my fingers digging into his shoulders, tasting the promise on his lips that he is mine as much as I am his. When we finally break apart, we are both breathing hard, and his eyes are dark with desire and something deeper. No running, he says against my lips, no second guessing. You are mine now, Maya, and I protect what is mine. Always, I reply, and I mean it with every fiber of my being, because I have just chosen danger and passion, and a love so consuming it could burn the world down, and I have never felt more alive in my entire life. Dante calls a meeting that evening with his inner circle, and when I try to slip away to my wing, he catches my wrist and asks where I am going. If I am staying, I am all in, I tell him, lifting my chin. Tell me the plan. I see respect flicker in the eyes of Luca and Marco, and the three other men who have gathered in the study, these dangerous men who have probably never seen anyone talk to their boss this way. And Dante just nods once and gestures for me to take the seat beside him. The plan is simple and terrifying. They will arrange for me to attend an art gallery opening next week, a public event with plenty of witnesses, with me on Dante's arm, making our relationship visible and undeniable. Santoro will make his move and they will be ready. Security positioned throughout the venue. Exits covered. Every angle anticipated. It is a trap, and he will know it is a trap, I say, trying to understand the logic. Why would he still come? Dante's smile is predatory and cold and reminds me exactly what he is capable of. Because he is arrogant enough to think he can outwit me, he says, and his voice holds absolute certainty. And because he needs to send a message that no one is safe from him, not even someone under my direct protection. My role is straightforward. Attend the gallery as his date, be visible, trust that he will keep me safe, and the simplicity of it makes my stomach clench, because simple does not mean easy, and being bait, even willing bait, means painting a target on myself and hoping Dante's men are faster than Santoro's. The men file out one by one until it is just Dante and me in the study, and he turns to face me with an expression that is almost vulnerable. If you want to change your mind, he starts, but I cut him off. I do not, I say firmly, but promise me you will not do anything stupid trying to protect me. His laugh is short and holds no humor. I cannot promise that, he says, and his hand comes up to trace the line of my jaw. If it comes down to you or me, Maya, I will choose you every single time. The declaration should terrify me, but instead it settles something in my chest, because I realize I would make the same choice, that, somewhere in the past 2 weeks, this man has become more important to me than my own safety. Then we both stay alive, I say, covering his hand with mine, because I am not losing you either. The determination in my voice seems to surprise him, and he pulls me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead that feels like a promise. And I know that whatever happens at that gallery, we are walking into it together, with our eyes open and our hearts fully committed to whatever consequences follow. The emerald green gown Dante chose for me fits like it was made for my body. Silk that moves like water and makes me feel powerful and beautiful and terrified all at once. And when I see myself in the mirror with diamonds at my throat that probably cost more than my entire existence, I barely recognize the woman staring back. Dante appears in the doorway of my suite, wearing a tailored tuxedo that makes him look like he stepped out of a film about dangerous men and forbidden love. And the way his eyes travel over me makes heat pool low in my stomach, despite the fear coursing through my veins. The gallery is everything I have ever dreamed of, soaring ceilings and perfect lighting, and the kind of crowd that includes politicians and business people and artists whose names I have only read in magazines. And they all defer to Dante as we move through the space, paying respects disguised as casual greetings. Security is everywhere but invisible. Luca and Marco and others I recognize from the mansion blending seamlessly with the crowd in expensive suits, and I can feel their presence like a net that is either protecting me or trapping me, or maybe both. Then I see them, my designs, actually featured on the walls with little plaques bearing my name, and for a moment I forget to breathe because Dante arranged this, made my dream come true even as he is using me as bait. And the contradiction of it makes my chest ache. That is when I spot him across the room, Marco Santoro, older than Dante, with sharp features and silver at his temples, and eyes that watch us with the kind of calculation that makes my skin crawl. Dante's arm tightens around my waist in a grip just short of painful. Stay close, he murmurs against my ear, and I can feel the tension vibrating through his body like a wire pulled taut. Santoro approaches brazenly, cutting through the crowd like he owns the space, and when he stops in front of us, his smile does not reach his cold eyes. Dante, he says with false warmth, and this must be the talented Miss Torres. I have heard so much about you. The way he looks at me feels like a violation, like he is cataloging my weaknesses and planning exactly how to exploit them. Such a shame, he continues, his accent thicker than Dante's, a bright young artist caught up in our world's complications. The threat is wrapped in velvet, but unmistakable, and I feel Dante's entire body go rigid beside me, his control hanging by a thread. She is under my protection, Dante says, and his voice, and his, is ice and razors. Touch her, and you will learn exactly what complications mean. The two men stare at each other, and I realize I am witnessing something primal, two predators establishing territory, and I am standing between them feeling like a gazelle who has wandered into a lion's den. Santoro's smile widens like he has gotten exactly the reaction he wanted, and as he turns to walk away, I know with bone-deep certainty that the trap is about to spring and nothing will ever be the same after tonight. I excuse myself to the restroom exactly as we planned, and Dante's eyes follow me across the gallery floor until I disappear into the corridor that leads to the back of the building, my heart hammering so hard I can hear it in my ears. The hallway is dimmer than the main space and my heels click against marble that suddenly feels too loud, and that is when two men step out from a doorway blocking my path with bodies that look like walls. Mr. Santoro would like a word, the taller one says with an accent I cannot place. Privately. Fear spikes through me sharp and electric, but I remember the panic button in my clutch, remember Dante's instructions to stay calm and trust the plan, and I let them escort me to a back office where Santoro waits behind a desk like he owns the place. You care about Dante, he says without preamble, and his smile is cruel. Then you will convince him to back off my territory, or you will be the reason he loses everything. Before I can respond, before I can even process the threat, the door explodes inward, and Luca and Marco are there with weapons drawn and faces set in expressions of deadly intent. Santoro's men go for their guns, and I drop to the floor exactly as Dante taught me, covering my head with my arms and making myself as small as possible while the world erupts around me. The gunfire is silenced, but not silent, muffled pops that sound almost polite compared to the violence they represent. And there is shouting in Italian, and the thud of bodies hitting walls, and then sudden, absolute silence that is somehow more terrifying than the noise. Hands grip my shoulders, and I nearly scream before I recognize Dante's touch, and he is pulling me up, and his hands are running over my arms and my face with frantic urgency. Are you hurt? He demands, and his voice is raw with fear I have never heard from him. Did they touch you? I am okay, I manage to say, even though I am shaking so hard my teeth are chattering. I am okay, Dante. I am okay. He pulls me against his chest, and I can feel his heart racing as fast as mine, and over his shoulder I can see Santoro on the floor with Luca's gun pressed to his temple, and Marco securing the two other men with zip ties, like this is a routine Tuesday. The plan worked, but standing here in the aftermath with the smell of gunpowder in the air and adrenaline making everything feel surreal, I realize how easily it could have gone wrong. How close I just came to being the leverage Santoro wanted to use. Against the man whose arms are now wrapped around me like he will never let go. Santoro is subdued, but not dead, Luca's knee in his back and wrists being secured with professional efficiency. And I realize Dante's control extends even into violence, because killing him here would have been easier, but this is calculated and strategic. Police sirens wail in the distance, growing closer, and I tense until Dante murmurs that someone called them, that this is part of the plan, that everything is unfolding exactly as intended. You made a mistake, Marco. Dante says, and his voice is deadly calm as he crouches beside Santoro's prone form. You involved an innocent. In front of witnesses. Luca pulls out a tablet and shows security footage from the gallery. Clear video of Santoro's men pulling me away from the crowd. Evidence of attempted kidnapping that no lawyer will be able to explain away. When the police arrive, it is a clean scene, attempted abduction interrupted by private security, and I watch as officers who clearly know Dante treat him with deference while they cuff Santoro and read him his rights. Dante's lawyers appear as if summoned, already talking about charges that sound extensive, kidnapping and assault and attempted extortion, and I realize this has been planned for weeks or maybe longer. The legal system will destroy him, Dante murmurs to me as we are escorted out through a back entrance to avoid the press that has already started gathering. This is not about revenge, Maya. It is about removing a threat permanently and publicly so others think twice before coming after what is mine. It is over, he says as we slide into the back of his town car, Luca at the wheel and Marco in the passenger seat. He cannot touch you now, but I can feel the tension still vibrating through his body where he sits beside me, can see it in the rigid set of his shoulders and the way his jaw clenches and unclenches, and I realize that even though the immediate threat has been neutralized, something else is bothering him. Dante, I say softly, placing my hand over his where it rests on his thigh. What is wrong? He is quiet for a long moment, staring out the tinted windows as the city slides past in a blur of lights. Tonight proves something I have been trying to ignore, he says finally. That caring about you makes me vulnerable in ways I cannot control. That there will always be another Santoro, another threat, another person who sees you as the way to hurt me. His hand turns under mine to grip my fingers almost painfully tight. I nearly lost you tonight, Maya. The plan worked, but it could have just as easily failed, and then what? I lean into his side and feel him wrap his arm around me, pulling me close. Then we make sure it never happens again, I say with more confidence than I feel. We adapt. We get stronger. We do whatever it takes to protect what we have built. He presses his lips to the top of my head, and I feel him exhale slowly, like he is releasing something he has been holding too tight. Whatever it takes, he echoes, but the words sound like a vow that might cost us both more than we are prepared to pay. Back at the mansion, Dante is distant and cold, his walls rebuilt higher and stronger than before, and when he disappears into his study without a word, I give him 20 minutes before I follow, because I know what fear looks like when it is masquerading as control. I find him standing at the window with a glass of scotch in his hand, staring out at the city lights like they hold answers he cannot find, and the set of his shoulders is so rigid it looks painful. Talk to me, I say from the doorway, and he does not turn around. You should go, he says, and his voice is flat and emotionless. Take the money, the new identity. Tonight proved you are not safe with me. I move into the room and close the door behind me, and suddenly I understand what is happening, can see it so clearly it makes my chest ache. He is terrified. For the first time in 16 years, he let himself love someone, and it almost got her killed, and now he is trying to push me away before the next threat emerges. I am not going anywhere, I say, crossing to stand beside him at the window. You do not understand, he says, and finally he turns to look at me with eyes that are haunted. This will not be the last time. There will always be someone who... I cut him off with a kiss, fierce and claiming and desperate, my hands fisting in his shirt to pull him down to me. When I pull back, we are both breathing hard, and his eyes are dark with desire and confusion and fear. I am not some fragile thing that needs to be kept away from your life, I say, and I make sure he is looking at me when I continue. I am choosing to be in your life, danger and all. Do you understand what that means, Dante? It means I know what you are and what your world is, and I am staying anyway. His hands come up to frame my face with a gentleness that contradicts the violence we just survived. You could die, Because of me, he whispers. Then I die loving you, I reply, and I watch something crack in his expression. You said I was yours. Well, you are mine too. That means I do not run when it gets hard. That means I stand beside you and we face whatever comes together. He kisses me then with a desperation that tells me how close he came to sending me away, how much it cost him to even offer, and when he pulls me against his chest, I can feel his heart racing and his hands trembling slightly as they slide into my hair. I cannot lose you, he says against my lips. Then do not push me away, I reply. We are stronger together than apart. He holds me for a long time there in the study with the city glittering below us, and I feel the fear slowly drain from his body as acceptance takes its place. Acceptance that I am choosing this life with my eyes open and my heart fully committed. 6 months pass in a blur of work and integration and learning to navigate a world I never knew existed, and when the rebrand for Moretti Holdings officially launches, it is brilliant in ways that surprise even me. The new identity I created walks the line between legitimate business empire and old world power, clean enough to attract corporate clients, but with subtle elements that speak to those who know what to look for. And within weeks, Dante is fielding inquiries from companies that would never have considered working with him before. But more than that, I have suggested legitimate expansions into areas he had not considered: art acquisition and gallery management and design consultancy, ways to grow the empire that do not require violence or intimidation. And I watch him listen to my ideas with respect that makes me feel valued beyond just being the woman he loves. His world opens to me slowly, carefully, and I meet the other families at formal dinners where ancient Italian men size me up like I am a threat, or an asset, or maybe both. At one such dinner, an older boss with knowing eyes asks, "What is your role, Miss Torres?" And before I can formulate an answer, Dante says she is my partner in all things. And the weight of that statement silences the entire table, because everyone understands what he is really saying. Recognition, protection, warning. She is not just my lover or my employee, she is my equal, and anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. I carve my own space in his world, converting part of the mansion's west wing into a proper studio where I take on select clients, projects I choose because they interest me, not because I need the money, and Dante never questions my independence or tries to control my work. Isabella has become something like a mother figure, teaching me Italian phrases and family recipes, and telling me stories about Dante as a boy that make him seem human and vulnerable. Luca and Marco treat me like a sister they are determined to protect, teaching me self-defense and making sure I know where the panic buttons are hidden throughout the mansion, and checking in with me daily, like my safety is their personal responsibility. The mansion that felt like a prison that first night now feels like home. Not because I have been trapped here, but because I have chosen to build a life within these walls. My art covers the hallways, my books fill the shelves, my coffee mug sits on the counter next to his, and when I wake up in the morning wrapped in silk sheets with Dante's arm around my waist, I do not think about my old apartment, or my old life, or what I gave up. I think about what I gained, this partnership built on respect and passion, and a love so fierce it has survived attempts on both our lives. And I realize I am not just surviving in his world, I am thriving in ways I never could have alone. 1 year to the day after I destroyed his suit and my life in a single clumsy collision, Dante takes me back to that exact corner of Fifth Avenue where everything changed. And I do not understand why until we are standing on the sidewalk with pedestrians flowing around us like water around stones. I have been thinking about that morning, he says, and his hand is warm in mine despite the October chill. How one moment changed everything. How if you had been 5 seconds earlier or later we might never have met. How you crashed into my life with your coffee and your fire and made it impossible for me to go back to what I was before. He reaches into his jacket pocket and produces a small velvet box, and my breath catches in my throat because I suddenly understand exactly what is happening. I told you once that you had ruined me, he says, opening the box to reveal a ring that is stunning but not gaudy. A single diamond set in platinum with small emeralds on either side, and I realize he chose stones the color of my eyes, that even in this he sees me. You did ruin me, Maya. You ruined me for anyone else, for any other life, for the careful, controlled existence I built to keep myself safe from exactly this kind of vulnerability. His voice is rough with emotion, and his eyes hold mine with devastating intensity. Marry me. Not because it is strategic, or because it protects you, or because it makes sense in my world. Marry me because I cannot imagine a single day without you challenging me, seeing me, choosing me. My eyes fill with tears, and I am laughing and crying at the same time because this dangerous man is standing on a busy Manhattan street corner asking me to spend forever with him. You forgot the most important reason, I manage to say through the emotion clogging my throat. His expression shifts to something almost vulnerable. What is that? Because I love you, I say, and the words feel inadequate for the depth of what I feel, but they are all I have, completely, impossibly. Yes. He slides the ring onto my finger, and it fits perfectly, like everything about us fits despite the impossibility. And then he is kissing me there on the corner where we collided, where my old life ended, and this new dangerous, beautiful life began. Pedestrians flow around us muttering about people blocking the sidewalk. Coffee carts steam on the corner filling the air with that familiar espresso scent. The city moves on completely indifferent to the fact that my entire world has just shifted on its axis. But we are locked in this moment. His hands cupping my face and mine fisted in his coat, and both of us smiling against each other's lips like we have just won something precious. When we finally break apart, he keeps me close, forehead pressed to mine, and whispers so only I can hear, "From now on you are mine, and I am yours, and nothing will ever change that." Always, I reply, and I mean it with everything I am. 1 year after Dante slid that ring onto my finger, I stand in a gallery in Soho, surrounded by my own work, my first solo show, and the art on these walls tells the story of my journey in ways words never could. Paintings that blend darkness and light, sculpture that explores themes of constraint and freedom, photography that captures beauty in dangerous places. And as I move through the crowd accepting congratulations, I catch sight of Dante watching me with an expression of such fierce pride it makes my chest ache. His hand finds the small of my back in that possessive, protective gesture that has become as familiar as breathing, and I lean into his touch knowing I am exactly where I belong. Jessica is here. We reconciled after her boyfriend turned out to be one of Santoro's plants, and she spent weeks apologizing for not seeing the danger. And now she stands near the bar laughing with Isabella, who insisted on overseeing the catering because she does not trust anyone else to properly represent the Moretti family. Luca and Marco move through the space in suits that make them look almost civilized, making jokes about being art critics while their eyes never stop scanning for threats, and I realize these people have become my family in ways I never expected. A journalist approaches with recorder in hand, asking Ms. Moretti, "Your work has such intensity. Where does it come from?" And hearing his last name attached to mine still sends a thrill through me, even after a year of marriage. From understanding that sometimes the most dangerous choices lead to the most beautiful destinations, I reply, and I feel Dante's hand squeeze mine 3 times in quick succession, our code for "I love you" that we can use in public without anyone knowing. Later, we escape to the gallery balcony overlooking the city that almost destroyed us, but ultimately brought us together, and my phone buzzes with an email from a potential client who makes it clear they want to hire me, specifically because I am Dante Moretti's wife. I delete it without responding because I only take work I want now, projects that speak to me rather than paychecks I need, and that freedom is worth more than any amount of money. "No regrets?" Dante asks, pulling me against his side as we watch the lights of Manhattan glitter below us. "Not a single one," I reply, tilting my face up to kiss him. "Best coffee I ever spilled." His laugh is warm and genuine, and the sound of it makes me smile because this dangerous man, who commands an empire and could destroy lives with a word, is mine completely, and I am his. And together we have built something that neither violence nor fear nor the weight of his world can break. The city moves on below us, millions of people living their safe, ordinary lives, and I would not trade places with a single one of them, because I chose danger and passion and a love so consuming it changed everything. And I have never been more myself or more alive than I am right now in his arms.